The government says the overnight coup in Benin Republic is void. But if that's true, why are French jets still bombing a Benin military base? With Talon's speech, is the situation really settled? Nigeria has now joined the operation, even though its own army is stretched by insecurity at home. So if the government is firmly in charge, why does it take foreign forces to secure the capital? Let's get the details. Good afternoon and welcome to Flash News. I am Tabitha Arko. Let's begin. Ukraine is preparing to present a revised peace plan to the United States on Tuesday as part of renewed efforts to end Russia's nearly 4-year-old war. The development comes high-level talks in London between President Volodymyr Zelensky and the leaders of France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. The move comes at a time when Washington is increasing pressure on Kyiv to accept a rapid peace settlement. Ukraine, however, is seeking to counterbalance a US-backed draft widely viewed in Europe as favoring Russian interest. Now we'll see that Monday's emergency meeting in London, hosted by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and attended by French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, was intended to strengthen Kyiv's negotiating position. Zelensky said the revised proposal contains 20 key points, though territorial concessions remain a major sticking point. Now, Moscow continues to demand that Ukraine cede occupied regions, a condition Kyiv maintains is unacceptable since the war began. Now, let's take a look.
And if there's to be a ceasefire, it needs to be a just and lasting ceasefire. And that's why it's so important that we repeatedly set out the principle that matters about Ukraine are for Ukraine. And we stand here to support you in the conflict and support you in the negotiations and make sure that this is a just and lasting settlement if we can get that far.
Right there, Starmer reaffirmed his position and his country's position to continually support Ukraine. But then, however, we see that after leaving London, Zelensky traveled to Brussels for talks with EU and NATO leaders, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, European Council President Antonio Costa, and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte reaffirmed that any eventual peace agreement must uphold the Ukraine's sovereignty and ensure long-term security guarantees. Earlier in the day, a British government official said the London discussions also focused on how to unlock the value of Russian state assets frozen in Western banks. Leaders from 7 EU countries, Estonia, Finland, Ireland, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Sweden, have pushed the bloc to urgently revive a stalled proposal to use those funds to support Ukraine. Meanwhile, European leaders are also seeking to secure stronger US security guarantees in order to deter future Russian aggression. We see that the urgency has grown following the publication of a US ceasefire framework last month that raised concerns in Europe about the possibility of Kyiv being pressured into accepting Russian terms that could undermine regional stability. Despite American assurance that negotiations are entering a final stage, neither Kyiv nor Russia has shown willingness to endorse the US-drafted framework. Zelensky also has stressed the need for coordination between the United States and Europe, noting that both are essential to reaching any workable agreement. In a video addressed on Sunday, Zelensky outlined Ukraine's immediate priorities: enhanced air defense, long-term financial support, and a clear unified position among Western allies as diplomatic activity intensifies. Now, the urgency is underscored by worsening battlefield conditions, with Russian forces advancing in the east and stepped-up attacks severely impacting Ukraine's energy grid. Let's take a look.
Regarding to peace talks, what we had in the United States and between us and our team came back, and I think that they will brief us after talks with the American team and after talks of Americans with Russians. I think there are a lot of what we have to discuss, to speak about, things which are very important for today. I think unity between Europe and Ukraine, and also unity between Europe, Ukraine, and the United States. There are some things which we can't manage without Americans, things which we can't manage without Europe, and that's why we need to make some important decisions.
Important decisions needs to be made at this time. Now, moving on, U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff and Presidential Advisor Jared Kushner held several days of discussions with Ukrainian officials in Miami last week. After presenting an updated proposal to Moscow, the talks ended without progress. Washington has expressed frustration at Kyiv's hesitation. The Ukraine insists key elements of the U.S. plan require renegotiation. That's the development we're having at that end. Now moving over to what is happening in West Africa. In West Africa, in Benin Republic's President Patrice Talon has praised the country's armed forces for what he described as their loyalty and swift action in stopping an attempted coup on Sunday. But even as his administration insists the situation is under control, the events have triggered broader questions across the region, particularly concerning the involvement of foreign militaries in Benin's internal crisis. On Sunday morning, a group of soldiers calling themselves the Military Committee for Refoundation seized the state broadcaster and announced that the government had been dissolved. Within hours, authorities said the takeover had been foiled, and Talon appeared on national television to commend the army for standing Republican and loyal. Let's take a listen.
I would like to salute the sense of duty of our army and its leaders who remained Republican and loyal to our homeland. With them, we stood firm, regained positions, and cleaned up the last pockets of resistance from the mutineers.
Now, as he has stated, if the coup was contained so quickly, observers ask, why were foreign air forces operating in Benin's airspace? What prompted France to intervene, and under what mandate? And why did Nigeria, which faces its own intense security challenges at home, deploy aircraft and offer ground support to a neighboring country in crisis? But see, France has not publicly confirmed details of its role, but Nigerian officials have acknowledged that Benin made two separate requests for both air and ground assistance. Nigeria's involvement has raised eyebrows domestically and across the region. The Nigerian military continues to struggle against Boko Haram, ISWAP, and other insurgent groups within its own borders. Critics question whether Nigeria can justify mobilizing forces abroad when it has yet to fully secure its own territory. Now let's take a look at that. Right there on your screen are the Nigerian army moving over to Benin Republic to supposedly support the failed coup we just saw there. Now we see that the situation has also fueled speculation about the extent of President Talon's control during the initial hours of the coup attempt. With the coup leader, Colonel Pascal Tigri, broadcasting online and claiming support, analysts say foreign intervention, particularly airstrikes, suggest that the government may have faced more serious challenges than officials are willing to publicly admit. Meanwhile, Talon expressed condolences to those affected by what he called a senseless adventure, but provided no casualty figures. Local media say 13 soldiers have been arrested so far, though it remains unclear whether Tigri is among them. The president also said some individuals remain held by fleeing mutineers, but did not specify how many or whether negotiations are occurring. Meanwhile, gunfire also and military patrols were reported in part of Cotonou on Sunday, but the city has since remained calm. Broadcast signals for state television and radio briefly caught during the mutiny have been restored. ECOWAS has maintained a hard line against coups following successive military takeovers in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and most recently Guinea-Bissau. The bloc announced that troops from Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, and Ghana had been placed on standby to support Benin in preserving constitutional order. Now, we'll see that in this current situation, the speed and the scale of the foreign military response has sparked debate. If the coup was quickly defeated, why was such extensive assistance necessary? And thus the reliance on foreign intervention risks undermining public trust in local institutions, especially as Benin prepares for a presidential election next year. Now, let's take a political backdrop of this development. Benin, once hailed as a model of democratic stability since 1991, has seen rising political tensions in recent years. President Talon has been in power since 2016 and is due to step down after the 2026 election. His party's candidate, former finance minister Romuald Wadagni, is considered the front runner. Opposition figure Ronald Agbojowa was disqualified by the Electoral Commission, a move critics say limits political competition. Just last month, lawmakers extended the presidential term from 5 to 7 years while maintaining the two-term limit, further intensifying scrutiny of the country's political direction. Now, as Benin moves toward elections and regional tensions remain high, the event of Sunday prompts observers to ask if the government was firmly in control. Why did restoring order require foreign air forces and regional military mobilization? And did Nigeria even have to participate? For many in Benin and across West Africa, the answer to that question may shape perceptions of the crisis more than the coup attempt itself. I mean, coups have been a central wave in West Africa, from Mali to Burkina Faso, and an attempted failed coup right now in Benin Republic. How many more nations are gearing for another military takeover? Well, let's move over to this development right here. In Japan, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake struck northeastern Japan late Monday, injuring at least 30 people and prompting the evacuation of about 90,000 residents. The quake hit at a local time at a depth of 50 kilometers, roughly 80 kilometers off the coast of Aomori, according to the Japan Meteorological Agency. Tsunami warnings were issued and later lifted. The waves of up to 70 centimeters were recorded. The tremor disrupted power and transport, leaving around 2,700 homes without electricity and forcing the suspension of several train services along the northeastern coast. Let's take a look. Authorities have urged the public to remain on high alert for at least a week, warning that stronger aftershocks may follow. The government activated its crisis response office and convened an emergency team to assess the situation and coordinate rescue and relief efforts. Tohoku Electric Power reported no abnormalities at the Higashidori and Onagawa nuclear plant, and officials confirmed no issues at the Fukushima site. Fukushima was severely in 2011 magnitude 9.0 earthquake and tsunami that killed more than 18,000 people. Japan, located along the seismically active ring of fire, experiences roughly 1,500 earthquakes each year. The country's earthquake panel recently warned of a high probability of a future mega quake along the Nankai Throw, an area historically linked to catastrophic tremors. Now, this is the development we're having right here. Until next time, this is where we'll be drawing the curtain on today's Flash News. Remember, we'll bring you untold stories on Undaunted from the home front at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Until then, do have a pleasant day and stay safe.